And before we get going in tonight's episode, we're going to send this one out. I've been holding on to this one for a little while because I was waiting for the Anthony episode. He's from Texas, and I thought what better way is to dedicate this one to some fallen Texas Sheriff's Department officers. So Harris County, back in 27 March 2025, so I have been holding on to this one for a little bit. They had 4 sheriff's officers die by suicide. 3 of them were retired. One of them had been retired for about a year. Another one had been retired for a few months. The other 2, I believe. And then one of them, Christina Kohler, was the only active at the time. She passed away by suicide. She had hired on in 2018, so we're going to crack a beer for her. And for William Bozeman, Long Win, and Maria Vasquez, all 4 of them within a six-week stretch, all committed suicide. So this one's for Texas. Christina Kohler, William Bozeman, Long Win, and Maria Vasquez. I'll put a link to the article by CNN if you want to look at that. Our hearts go out to them and their family, obviously, still struggling, I'm sure, with this tragedy. Anytime you have current or former employees, we're all one big family. We all feel the pain. We all understand how hard that can be. And so that is for them. One more. So this one's for Texas. All right, we are live. Well, we're filming. We're recording. I'm here with Anthony, and coming all the way from Texas. I'm in Alabama. So we were just talking a minute ago about how we met and how you came across us meeting together, and you said it was the helmet sticker. So we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I want you to introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, and plug all your organizations. And
Okay.
whatever you do.
All right. Well, my name is Anthony DiGiovanni. I currently reside in Burleson, Texas. I've been a fireman about 15 years now. If you include all my volunteer time, I currently work for a department in North Texas. The next biggest city to us is Fort Worth. Been in the mental health space probably since COVID is when I really started kind of taking a lot of classes and really trying to get involved in that. Yeah, and we talked about the stickers, right? Like the fire service is big, but really small at the same time.
It's weird how being a fireman opens up that door. Like, hey, and you have friends in Texas, and you reached out like, let me get a couple of helmet stickers. Yeah, no problem. Hey, you want to be on the podcast? Yeah, sure, that sounds cool. And now we're becoming friends. So
here we are.
And here we are. So it's weird. So what do you describe what you do? You said you do a little bit with mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, you handle some of the meetings, or explain what you do and what you're doing in Texas, and we'll go.
Okay. So in my department, we're very small, right? So we're just one station. Right now we have about 20 guys, right, on the line, so to speak. And so we're really kind of in that beginning phase of trying to start a peer support program.
Okay.
Probably 4 years ago, I was able to link up with the Texas Line of Duty Death Task Force, which is a task force specifically designed to respond, obviously, in any line of duty deaths for police, fire, EMS. And so we try on the back end to handle all of the things. And obviously, it's usually we wait for that department to reach out to us. It's not something that we just go and do on our own because we don't really want to intrude on other people's privacy and things of that nature.
Sure.
And so right now with the organization, I'm a peer support coordinator, which is something that's new-ish to the organization. The task force has been around since about 2001, and so it's just kind of continued to grow and evolve, really based on the needs of that first responder space.
Okay.
So we saw a need to really try to take care of not only the families of the fallen, but also the brothers and sisters in those organizations, as they kind of try to deal with the aftermath of losing one of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I just took a systems class here in Texas, so I'm really trying to focus on that as well, trying to build that program and really just try to get kind of dip my toe in the water just to kind of see how I feel about that.
So when something when something bad happens, they're going to call you and you're going to go lead a meeting. Is that what I'm getting? Kind of because we have a very
So
similar program here in Alabama.
yeah, so essentially, so Wendy Norris, she's the CEO, and obviously she created the task force, and so essentially, like I said, what we do is either we'll hear about a death kind of word of mouth, or obviously we have members spread all over Texas, right? And so what she really does is she tries to facilitate the needs for that specific department, right? And so maybe they just want honor guard, or maybe they want to talk to some peer support guys and girls,
Okay.
or maybe they just need help with the funeral. And so once that decision is made, then we kind of disperse accordingly. And so one of my kind of roles within that organization is also to talk to the families and kind of spend some time with the families. And then also the new role is talking to the fellow firefighters of that fallen.
Okay. and and I'm sure you in Texas you're feeling the same way. This is something that it feels new sometimes.
Mhm.
Like we've had a lot of people say, "Why haven't we been doing this? Why are we just now realizing we need to have more conversations? We need to have critical incident stress debriefings after these big calls." Like I don't know if it was COVID that caused this, but I don't know. It's weird to think because we started around roughly the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
We had a rookie go through some things, and he'd held three, doing chest compressions on three children within like the first year or two of his career, and it exposed a problem. And then when we took a step back and realized, wow, we have a big problem here, and
Mhm.
nobody's talking about it. And so that's what we're realizing we have to do a better job of, and that's where the CIV conversations ventilation that's where that came from. Is literally we're just encouraging people to have conversations and
That's it.
talk,
Right.
and
And
it's that easy.
no, I don't know how it is for y'all in Alabama, but here in Texas, I feel like we're seeing a lot of younger guys and gals coming into the fire service, right? And it's kind of a catch-22 because you hope that they'll have a longer career, but they're coming to us without any life experiences, right? And
Yeah,
so I think it's important for us, some of the older guys and girls, to really kind of catch that early, right? And like you said, it could just be a conversation at the dinner table, right,
yeah,
or at breakfast. For us on my shift, we always sit down as a family for, we try to do for lunch and for dinner. And that's like, that's where all the biggest problems are solved, right? And I think, where I'm at, we do a really good job in the schools of kind of pushing, hey, it's okay to not be okay, right? It's okay to talk to people. And we try to catch that early before it gets, bad.
and the senior guys, and I'm sure you'll mirror this, is I'm a 21 plus now,
Okay.
and when we came in we didn't talk about it. I have calls from '04 that we still haven't discussed in depth, and what's weird is how much we're trying to change. The stigma is we're trying to change that. Number one. Number two, it feels like the department's getting younger. We have 19-year-old kids now. Some of these kids live at home. It's weird.
It
I
is
was
weird.
27 when I got here. 19-year-old kids. So so what have they been exposed to? And so I don't know. It's becoming more and more important that the senior guys and girls, you know, they speak up, like you said, at the dinner table where everything is solved. That's the first
Yeah.
place we start, having meals together at the
Yes.
station, discussing things. We were on the same call. Let's talk about it, and taking it from there. Sometimes that's all it takes.
It is, but I think, like you said too, it's hard, right? So I grew up, I'm third generation, right? So my granddad was in Chicago for a very, very long time, right? He retired in the 80s. Well, back then you didn't talk to anybody. You
No.
knew better, right? Then. And so I think even now, still, there's guys in my department that have 20, 25, 30 years in, and I think they were conditioned the same way, right? And so now the newer generation is coming in. And so I think you really have to find that balance of like, respecting the fact that they've been doing this a very long time, but also let them understand that, hey, it's also okay if you're not okay.
Hmm.
Because I can't even imagine what they've seen over the course of their 20 years, right? And so then you start bringing all these young kids, and they have to be able to understand that it's okay for them to deal with their issues, but they also have to make sure that they're helping these younger guys through it as well.
And so, it's your and I's responsibility to leave it better than we found it. It's Boy
Absolutely.
Scouts. It's preschool 101. And I'm getting towards the end of my career and I'm realizing we have this problem. Let's do something about it, and let's have these conversations. Let's let these younger guys and girls sitting at the dinner table hear the older guys having conversations, because then when they're a lieutenant someday and they have a 19-year-old kid on their crew, they're not going to, that round will never know the stigma that used to be here, and, it doesn't have to be that hard, but it's like you said, it's okay to not be okay. But
Absolutely.
it's just the simple act of having these conversations and letting these new kids hear us having these conversations openly about these things, discussing what we did right, what went wrong, what could we do better. Being more open about this stuff is going to make a huge impact 20 years from now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%.
And it takes time. Do you feel like you have any pushback from this? Like, there's
So I
always one
think,
or two salty, grumpy old guys,
yeah,
the ones that don't wear an air pack and, just,
yes.
but
So I think, yes, initially, I think that we did see some pushback. I'm fortunate on my department where I have another guy on my shift who's also very big in the mental space. He actually also has a podcast that he's been working on doing the
yeah,
same exact thing, right? Just a bunch of guys talking about mental health, right? And so he's really helped me to try to change the trajectory of like, okay, let's talk about this, right? Let's make sure that we're all okay, right? Because in my department, we teeter between city and rural, and we see our fair share of things, right? We're one station department, we run about 4,000 calls a year. We see a little bit of everything, right? And I think that we were talking about this today. I think it's important moving forward that as these guys and girls start to retire, that we have some system in place to make sure that they're okay when they retire. So we're not just hanging them their gold axe and sending them on their way, right? We have to make sure that there's some kind of system in place so that way we're checking on them, and maybe not forever, right? But maybe at least the first couple of years to make sure that they're still okay and that they're not forgotten about.
exactly. And like, I can only speak for our department. We seem to have not a lot of people that come back around.
Right.
And I don't know what that's about. We're trying to figure that out. We kind of, inside the CIV stuff, we've kind of had these three platforms. One of them is when, your day one, your first 365, your first year, and then 365 to I think 9125 as a career. And then after that, it's your over, we call it the overhaul phase, is when you leave. Because one of the things is we're realizing, let's take a guy or girl, let's take a first responder who hasn't had any really communication or anything for 25-year career, and then they retire, and now the safety net of sitting at the table with you at dinner is gone, or they go and now their friends are no longer around every third or fourth day. I think we're realizing that when you take that away and you kick them out into the world with all this smoke and baggage, what's going to happen and how are they doing? So one of the things is we're trying to figure out a way to bring them back in and have them be a part of the team again.
Right. So it's funny you say that. So my chaplain and I were talking today, and he brought up something. He's a fireman as well, and he brought up something that I didn't even think about. What about monthly breakfasts? Right, where you bring in all your retirees and bring them to whether it's a fire station or maybe like a central location. Right. Some of our bigger departments in North Texas, they do that a couple times a month, but obviously have a bigger membership. Right. But I think, like you said, even if it's that one retiree and his shift mates get together for a breakfast, that gives him that ability or that ability to be part of the family again.
Yeah, because that safety net of your crew, we have the term blue shirts get blue shirts. And the blue shirts, you may not realize how much you're leaning on them until they're not there. And the day these guys and girls leave and now you're no longer, the next shift rolls around and they're not there, they're in the world and they're floating. What did they take with them? What have we not talked about? What are they dealing with? And they have a tendency to disappear and not come around. We have guys that live, my old lieutenant lives less than 2 miles from the station. Never see him. So what does that tell you? And I hope when I get there in a couple of years, I can tell you and we can do a better job. But
Yeah,
it's one of the things we need to work on.
yeah, and I wonder if it's like a mind game, right? Do they feel like you said, like they're not part of the family, or maybe they won't be received as well as they were when they were on shift, right? But I think, like you said, we have to do a better job of making sure that that stigma and that thought process disappears.
Yeah. One of my best friends retired, I think 2 years now ago. 2 years now ago. Is that proper English? I don't know.
Sounds good.
Recently he retired, and he made the comment, when he came, when I pitched this to the city first, the guys, he came and saw the presentation, and he made a comment that he was nervous coming into the station. And at that time, he'd only been retired like 6 months. And this is a guy who's not going to say things like that unless he really means it. And I said, well, what is that? And he goes, well, he goes, it's weird. You're not part of the team anymore. And he goes, and I was worried. And he said some things that really blew my mind, about I'm not part of the team anymore. I'm like, it's only been 6 months. You gave 25 years of your life to this city and this department, 6 months, and now you don't feel like you belong here. That's weird. And I want to look at that more. And it just, he made these comments like newer faces. They don't know me. I don't know them. It's weird. And I'm like, so I don't know. You feel instantly not part of the team.
Yeah. And that's a scary thought, right? Especially after you put 25 years in, you would think that, and maybe like you said, maybe because they're not coming around enough, or maybe they feel like they don't belong.
I just find it fascinating that you give 25 years of your life with these men and women doing at times, some very dangerous and bad things, and sharing these experiences. And then the day you retire, they hand you an axe and a few people give you a hug, and then you go away. And it's just weird to think that you don't. So I'm hoping that through all of this stuff that we're all out here trying to do is that it encourages more comeback, more part of the team. So
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird thing. We didn't have much pushback. To answer my question that I gave to you, is I didn't have really any pushback, and it scared me because, I noticed there was a little bit of a problem, and I wanted to do a presentation. So I put this thing together for the guys and girls, and I brought them all together, and I thought, well, if they laugh at me, then they laugh. That's fine. But at least I pointed out the problem, because I'm getting ready to leave, and I don't want it to go unnoticed. So, but then once the presentation was over, I had so many people having great conversations. Sometimes it was one-on-one like this. Sometimes it was people would pull you aside like, hey man, do you remember that time? And they were unloading these things. And it's like, oh my God,
it works. Yeah.
It works. And it's, I always use the term, it's so kindergarten stuff, but
it is. But like you said, sometimes it just takes that one person to start that conversation.
Exactly. Right? And you being an old senior guy, these young kids are looking at you. What is Anthony doing? How's Anthony acting?
Yeah. And I tell you what, there are some days, and I'm sure you feel the same, where some days you don't even feel like you're at 100%, but you really have to be able to like identify why and try to fix that. So like you said, those young guys and girls don't feel uncomfortable coming to you with whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Yeah. And it's not mandatory, obviously, and nobody's required to talk, and it's kind of a little bit of a balance too, where you don't want to be overbearing about it, but you also know, that it's good. You try to lead by example. And so if the young kid, you get back from a bad call and they don't want to talk, or they're not talking, then at least they can see somebody else having a conversation about that call, and let them just be in the room, or and when they're ready they'll talk, or maybe they're fine.
Yeah.
I agree. Not everything gets filed away into the the bad category. I mean, sometimes calls are just calls. But so one station, 20?
One station.
Is it a paid department or a volunteer?
It is. Split? No, we're paid. Yeah, okay. So we have full-time guys and girls, and then we have some part-time medic-only positions, so they just drive the ambulance.
Okay. Do you run full EMS? Like if you
so we have our own ambulance. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we have an engine, a truck, a tanker, and then 3 ambulances. 2 of them are in service all the time. One's a reserve.
Okay. So very.
What about you guys?
We're doing the same thing. We're primary EMS. If you call 911, you're basically getting a fire truck and the ambulance as well. And we have the medics on the truck and drugs, and so it's and it's that's another thing too we were talking about earlier is I was talking to about it. Somebody asked, you run medical calls? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lady at the gym. She's like, I don't understand. Like, you do realize the firemen we're spaced out in the city, and if you're having a heart attack, the ambulance could be on the other side of town at the hospital, or fire station is 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
I said, you're getting a fire truck. And it didn't dawn on her that we go to those things. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
87% of my job is medical.
Yeah. Yeah. And for us, so we have a hospital in town, but it's just can't really do a whole lot. So anything major, strokes, major traumas, anything like that, we're going downtown. So you're looking at a 2 hour from the time you get dispatched to the time you're back in the station. You're looking at a 2 hour window where there's potentially no ambulances in the city, right? And so, like you said, it's important to have those paramedics on the engine. Now we're lucky we rely on a lot of mutual aid. We have some good agreements with some mutual aid departments around us. But as we build that part-time program and that peak truck, hopefully we can reel in some of that, the need for the mutual aid.
So when you get a bad one, you pull an ambulance, you're out for at least 2 hours. That's a long way to go.
It's a long time. Yes. Yes. And it happens more often than you think.
Do you have Lucas devices?
We do. Yeah. So we have that LifePack 35 we just got. We have the Lucases. We have Vents now, which we utilize quite a bit. Just because, depending on where we are, it's a long transport time.
Time to be doing CPR in the back of an ambulance, obviously.
And you and I both know that's not fun. It's not like it is on the movies. It's not fun at all.
Well, none of it's like the movies, number one.
No, not at all. I don't see that much fire, I promise.
No. And that's exactly 87% of my job is EMS. The lady at the gym didn't realize I ran medical calls. So it's like, and it's not her fault. She doesn't, she's probably never called 911 before. But someday when she does, if she ever does, you're going to have 4 firemen, 2 ambulance, and possibly a PD unit standing in her living room going, how can we help? So
yeah, where are you? What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah, our job is, and then that adds to the stress too of, imagine being 19 right now, coming in and not realizing that 87% of our job is medical, and now you're at a gunshot, or you're at a cardiac arrest, and you're doing chest compressions, going, I'm here to fight fire. Well, no, this is your job.
Mm-hmm.
You have the equipment to fight a fire when it happens, but this is going on all the time.
And I think that goes back to, like we talked about too, with educating the new recruits as they're coming in, right? So I don't know about where you're at, but here we have a lot of high schools that offer EMT and fire, right? And so a lot of guys and girls, kids are coming out of high school with an EMT certification with no idea what they're doing, no idea what to expect, right? And like we talked about, we touched on COVID. I think COVID really changed the trajectory of EMS in so many different ways. Right. There's a lot of programs that we're doing online only with no hands-on clinicals before they were just thrown into the field. Right. And those, I think, are the people that we really need to focus our attention on, because they weren't taught how to deal with the things that we see.
That's a really good point. I've never thought about that. We've changed the way we go to school, and their training, they may have even less time hands-on or riding, ride-alongs than I did in 02.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy to think about how quickly they're pumping it out.
Wow. I never thought about it. I'm going to write that down. So I got to find a 19-year-old that's not afraid to talk online and go, explain, how does it feel to be 19? And, tell me your expectations, and then tell me the reality, because as you get out there in the real world and things happen, and it's like, yeah, this isn't Chicago Fire. This isn't the movies.
I actually know a couple of, at my part-time job, we have a lot of younger kids. There's one name in particular that I'd like to hook you up with. I think he would be more than willing to talk.
I'd love to hear a young first responder point of view, and we haven't had that yet.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting, and honest, because you talk to a bunch of salty old guys that are like, oh, we never used to talk about our feelings and blah, 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 and now you're trying to make me talk about my feelings. And it's like, no.
This kid has checked off a couple of things off that bucket list that nobody ever wants to check off in a very short amount of time. So I will text you his information. I think he would be great.
Yeah, and I've told this story a few times. I remember being in recruit school in 2004, and I was so busy doing fire stuff and trying to pass the test and, left-hand searching and throwing ladders and fighting, all the drills, just trying to survive. It never dawned on me I was going to go to a hanging.
Yeah. Never.
It's not that I didn't know that what we did, it just never really up here. Well, then you hit the floor after graduating, you're proud, your parents come and everybody's happy for you. You hit, and a couple shifts into your career, you're at a hanging. Well, I was like, that was a holy shit moment. Like, oh, we do this. And then when I started doing this, like, well, we're going to talk about this, and nobody did.
No,
And
of course
it was a very weird experience, and it's one of those things that has kind of brought me here, is because we got to make sure the next generation doesn't have that experience.
I agree, and I think that they need. So I teach part time at a little academy, and one of the days in that academy, we have somebody that comes and they talk only about mental health, right? And I think that that needs to be something that we see moving forward across all fronts, right? Because, like you said, you see it on TV and you think, oh, I'm just going to fight a bunch of fire. It's being great. Everything's being wonderful. And then those tones drop, and it's a completely different story, right? And I think that the more, like you said, we don't want to force it, but the more we educate everybody on the importance of just talking, I think the better we're going to be moving forward.
Because back then, I didn't need someone to cram it down my throat that someday you'd see a hanging. I just needed a senior guy or first senior girls. I just needed someone to talk about it, to remind this brain that, hey, that's when we're going to do that someday. And then when it happens, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to sit at the dinner table together so you don't have to take that memory and shove it down and wait till you're 48 to have it come back up and go, hey, maybe that's a reason why you didn't promote, or maybe that's a reason why it's just, it'll all come back out as soon if you keep shoving it down.
Absolutely.
So never thought I was too busy trying to pass recruit school and not die. It was 147 degrees in Alabama. You're running up and down the tower, getting drill after drill. And it's like, I'm just trying to literally
survive.
I'm going to try to survive. Yeah.
Yes.
So, we're trying to do a better job.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, these podcasts I think are great. And the more information that I think that we can send out to people, I think is really what's going to help in the long run.
I do. I agree with you 100%. I didn't understand it when someone said it needed to be a podcast, and you said your buddy has a podcast as well doing the same thing. And I'm sure when that was brought to him, like, hey, you should do this, it feels weird, but then at the same time, we need to be having these conversations. And people,
and especially like you said, this is one of those real low key kind of environments where it doesn't make it uncomfortable, right? Because I think you've probably seen it before. I've done some peer support stuff in the past with groups, and one of the big things that I've always noticed is you, as the person doing the peer support, you have to make sure everybody feels comfortable, right? And how that looks is going to be different every single time, right? It could be you just want to sit on the back bumper of the truck. Maybe they want to sit in a classroom setting. But I think that's how you get people, like you said, drawn to you, is you have to show confidence and a comfortability about you to make people want to come to you.
And, and truth is they may not find you or I comfortable talking to you and I. They may think we're bozos. But if they take the idea and they go home and they speak to their wife or their priest or another blue shirt or somebody they're comfortable with, then it still worked. I don't need everyone in the world to come to me. I'm just a talking head saying we need to have more conversations, just like you're doing. And so, it all goes back to that Boy Scout stuff. You leave it better than you found it, and you lead by example. And it's like, I'm going to try to spend my last years like you are, having positive conversations at the dinner table on shift instead of everybody running off to their bunks and hiding. And let's get together and have a meal. Let's talk about these things. Let's be a tighter unit and there for each other.
Especially so where I'm at, we have several guys that are 25 years and up, right? And so I think, like you said, moving forward, and something that I need to work on is making sure that they understand that they're not going to be forgotten about, like you talked about, right? Because you sometimes wonder, is that why they're staying around, right? Is it that they feel like when they leave, they're not going to have that camaraderie? They're not going to feel a sense of purpose once they check out for that last day.
They're not on the team anymore.
Yeah.
And it was weird to hear my buddy say that, who's not the type of guy that's going to say sensitive, he says, I'm not on the team anymore. Like, how do you just spent 25 years of your career here. You gave your, blood, sweat, and tears to this city and this department. 6 months in, you're nervous to walk into the station?
And it shouldn't be that way.
It should
It
not.
shouldn't be that way.
We can all agree it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
Why is it like that, and what can we do to fix it? I hope we can figure that out, because to think of how many people are out there that are struggling with some calls, because I believe you take 5 with you. I believe in the big 5. Let's find the camera. There's 5. Okay. I think everybody is going to have 5 that they're going to have to live with and learn to coincide and just carry for the rest of their life. I have 3-ish. I know there's a couple more coming. And those are the calls that I think we need a support system. When you leave and you hand me when I leave and you hand me an axe, I don't want the support system to leave, because I still have those 5 calls. And I'm going to need people who understand me, who understand what it's like to go into these situations, or even people who were there to help me carry that and manage it. But if that support system goes away, where are these guys and girls at? Are they sitting on the front porch right now, wishing someone would call? I don't know. It's
funny you say that. I can think of 4 right off the top of my head easily. And you're right. Like, how I hope, like you said, that we make it better than when we found it. So that way, when you and I retire, we have that support system.
And I think some of it's going to be on our shoulders to go into the station as well. I know it's not just the active guys and girls that are going to make it. You also have to be willing to go in and sit down and have a cup of coffee. But I think we can agree it's broken and we got to fix it.
Yeah.
But it scares me to think of how many good friends I have that have retired in the last 21 years, good lieutenants and drivers that are, in the wind. Are they dealing with things? I don't know. They're not reaching out.
Yeah, because they probably are leaving thinking they can't reach out, right? Maybe they're still afraid to reach out.
Hopefully they're talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have to be me, but I don't know. We got to fix that.
I agree.
Because, you can have a 1 station with 20, like you said, or you can have 8 stations. We're a small city, 8 stations, 140-ish firemen. You can go all the way up to, it doesn't matter. Firefighting is firefighting. EMS is EMS. That's sometimes too, you think of these volunteer departments. A lot of our cities, we're surrounded by a lot of volunteer, smaller cities. Well, these first responders can get a wreck with entrapment. They run calls with fatalities. They run EMS with hangings and shootings. They're doing the same thing. So it doesn't matter what size the department is.
No, and that's the thing too, is you often wonder, we're the same. There's quite a few volunteer departments around us. And I oftentimes wonder if they're like the forgotten stepchild, right? Like you said, maybe they're out there dealing with the same demons and the same calls that we're dealing with, but maybe they don't even know who to reach out to, right? Maybe that the information isn't being dispersed to those departments because they're not paid, right? So I think also it's important to make sure that we're watching out for those guys and girls too.
I think we're neglecting the volunteers.
That's how I started. I started as a volunteer and I loved every minute of it. And I would never, if I could do it again, I would. If I was younger, I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Because think about the volunteer. Let's say they live in a small community. They respond to this, prom night. They respond to that call. Roll over, multiple ejections, 3 fatalities, 2 not breathing. It's a bad call. They go home after that call. They don't have the table and the station like you and I do. They may just go home to their families. They may go to work the next morning.
Or they're going back to their full-time job.
They're going back to their job. Do they have the familyness that paid guys do, that, that live together? We have more. I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder if we should start there.
Yeah. And here's another thing. I'm glad you're sitting down for this one. What about families, right? So how do you, let's say you have Mr. and Mrs. Smith and their 19-year-old son is starting out in the fire service. Are we doing a good enough job of really introducing what we do to the families, right? As the senior membership, as, even as far up as the administration, I know that our chief and assistant chief do a really good job of meeting with all the families right when we come on, especially at that 1 year mark. Really, talking to them, letting them know, what we're all about. However, that might not be that way everywhere, right? And is that 19-year-old being straightforward and honest with their parents about what they are seeing, what they are experiencing?
So you're saying we need to bring in the parents or the family. We need to bring in the wife or the husband of the first responder within the first year and
Hmm.
help maybe have them be part of these conversations in
Yes,
the first year.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Just so that way they kind of understand. So I took the systems class just a few weeks ago, and one of the things that we talked about in the systems class was uh, being able to have those conversations with your spouse, with your mom, with your brothers and sisters, all those things to kind of let them know, hey, if I come home from a rough day and I'm giving you 40%, that's all I got to give. And I'm coming to you to help me with the rest of that. Right. And so maybe I'm going to be quiet, but here's kind of maybe some of the reasons why I'm quiet. Right. And so that way those family members have a better understanding of maybe how to receive that.
I'm going to write that down because I think you're right. I think you're 100% on point. We need to have the families involved in the first 365 days. Whether you're married, single,
Mm-hmm.
wife, kids, I don't know, maybe not kids, but
Yeah.
if we include the families in these in these settings, in these meetings, in these
Mm-hmm.
talks, and have them be from the very it's I've used the house foundation analogy before.
Mm-hmm.
If you build a proper foundation before you build the house on top of it, it's going to be a strong, sturdy house. Most people, when you buy a house, you don't want to pick it up and then rebuild the foundation and set it back down,
Right.
right? So if we start the foundation properly from the beginning, when 15, 20 years in, they're lieutenants, they're going to have a really strong
Mm-hmm.
house.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe
I
that
agree.
foundation has to include, the foundation has to include the family from the very beginning.
It does. And like you said, it doesn't have to be anything super structured. It could be a lunch or whatever you want to do at dinner and just have them all come together and just kind of talk about it, right? Because you never know. I feel like if you wait too long, this is the way I look at things when it comes to grief. For me, this is what I tell people is that grief, it doesn't make reservations and there's no expiration date, right? So
Oh,
grief is going to show up whenever it wants to show up and it might not ever expire, right? And so you have to be able to kind of get your family involved in how to help manage that as early on in the process as you can.
grief doesn't make reservations and it never expires. That's some gold right there. Did you hear
I pulled
that?
it from well, I used to wait tables. I was in the restaurant business for a very long time. So making reservations, I look at it as like, okay, your restaurant closes at 10 and you have that family of 8 coming in at 9:45, right? Unexpected. You weren't prepared for it, but hey, here they are, right? Grief's the same way. It can come at any time, right? And like we talked about, you have those 5 that you're going to probably leave with. I can think of 4 already. That's not going to expire, right? Those aren't going to just go away. So you have
That's
to be
right.
able to understand how to manage that throughout the entirety of your career and life after your career.
Yeah, because as soon as you retire, if you take the 5 with you and you go and you and your wife buy an RV and you travel around the United States, guess what's in the RV with you besides the dog?
Mhm.
Is
All that
those 5
stuff.
things.
Yep.
And if it's bugging you, and if you're still struggling with it, or you're using things to cope with it, well, like
Mhm.
drugs and alcohol or whatever, that when you get away from the fire service, I think that's when it's going to be multiplied. And if there's a problem, I think it's going to come quickly. And then you're like,
Mhm.
what the hell is this?
Yes.
I don't want to be
Agreed.
52 going, I have shit I've never talked about from '04.
Hmm.
And I don't want your new kid who's 19 to wake up at 34 on his 4th marriage, right? And he's kicking the dog and he has a drinking problem and he doesn't know why he's so angry.
Right. Because we never educated them as they're coming in on, hey, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to talk. Like you said, it doesn't have to be the two of us, it could be anybody, right? But as long as you're talking to somebody, that's I think going to help prolong your career.
And then if we brought the family in and the family was involved from day one in this person's fire career, they're going to notice a change in, Timmy, and they're going to go, Timmy, you're not acting right. What's going on?
Right.
Or, It's just another person to look out and watch, another blue shirt. I never realized that blue shirts don't have to be firemen. Blue shirts is the family.
It is a family. Yeah.
I wear a blue shirt for work, but my wife is a blue shirt. I never realized that. I'm going to write that down
Yeah.
as well.
See, look at us. Look at us coming up with all these things.
This is what happens when you sit around and have a great conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for real.
It isn't hard, people. And at the end of the day, if you're just setting a positive example for some people that are listening, you're doing great things. It's landing. Not everybody has to say something. I've learned that too. Everyone's listening.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't want to say anything, but they're listening. And they're also watching how you act, how you know. And so these things are landing, they're listening, and if they're having a hard time, I know that they would reach out to someone. It doesn't have to be me. But they're seeing it, they're seeing the senior guys. They're seeing people that have we're trying to make a positive change and change something that we know is broken. It's not working. You don't need to walk out of here in 25 years with a bunch of smoke in your can, and all this horrific stuff you've never dealt with, and then we kick you out into the street. It's
exactly
not a recipe
to be forgotten about.
Yeah. It's not going to work, and you're going to be a mess. You got to manage that smoke. I use the analogy that, in my little presentation, I say that when you come into the fire service, you're handed a glass box. Actually, tomorrow I'm talking to the new recruits.
Oh, nice.
And I said, imagine you're standing at the day one of your career holding this glass box, and every call you run, a little puff of smoke goes in it. You run a lift assist, just a little puff. If you run a suicide, that's a lot of smoke. Well, as your box fills up with smoke, you have to manage that. You have to ventilate that. You have to constantly managing the smoke in that box, because if you don't, you'll get to the point where you can't breathe. And so, I have this little prop that I'm building for it, because someday I'm actually going to have a little fogger that I hit the button.
Oh,
so if
nice.
I lift assist, and you'll watch this box with a fireman figurine fill up, and eventually my goal is for you to not be able to see it. So for the visual learners like myself.
Same, yeah.
And then every once in a while I'll say, now let's have a conversation at dinner table, or a senior guy or girl, you have a conversation and ventilate the top and let some of that smoke up. And this is how you have to spend 25 years. The next 9,125 days is managing the smoke in that box. We all have it.
Okay. I like that. So, okay.
To make sure that Anthony is walking around and his box doesn't look too full of smoke.
Right.
It's my job to make sure that you're not acting different. It's my job to approach you and go, hey, buddy, you all right? You seem a little off, and give you the opportunity to let some of that smoke out.
Right. So here's the question. How do we, for those senior guys and girls, we go back to it again, right? So how do you help assist them so that they're not carrying that entire box of smoke with them when they leave? Because inevitably they're going to take some of it with them, right? Because you weren't with them the whole career.
Yep.
But how do you at least, is there something that we can do to maybe remove some of that smoke before they leave?
I think it's going to be a 25-year process. I wish someone in 2004 would have explained. That's kind of what I'm doing right here. I'm talking to my 2004 self. Mm-hmm. If somebody would have explained your career as a glass box that you're carrying around every day for 9,125 days, and as the smoke gets too thick, you're going to have to let some of it out or you're not going to be able to breathe. Nobody took that time to do that, so I'm trying to fix that. Mm-hmm. But if you had this new hire, 19-year-old kid that and he's well aware that his career is a glass box that he's carrying with him, and that I can see and you can see, and we have to manage that. It's my job to help you manage your smoke. You help me manage my smoke. So when it comes time to leave, it's not overwhelming. Like, why do we have to be drowned? Why do we have to be suffocating in smoke at year 25? Well, then we've failed, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I need you to be in a good headspace when you decide to retire and buy an RV. Because if I didn't, I failed you.
Yeah.
I failed you as a first responder and as a friend if I didn't make sure that your box is not completely jammed full of smoke and you're suffocating and you've been crying out for help for the last 3 years, and you're drinking too much, and your wife wants a divorce, and the dog won't come near you.
Yep.
It's like, well, what the hell's going on with Anthony?
Yeah.
And I didn't take 10 minutes out of my time at dinner or watching TV at the station and go, hey, man, I don't want that new kid to leave with a box full of smoke.
I agree. No, I agree 100%. And for us too, you talk about the dinner table. For us, I'm not sure about where you're at, but the ambulance, man, I tell you what, coming back from calls, that's where we get a lot of things accomplished, right? A lot of conversations are had. And for me, I'm sure you're the same, as you could read body language pretty well, right? I can look at my partner and be like, you know what? What's going on?
Yeah.
And vice versa. I was going through some stuff not long ago, and I was a little burnt out, didn't recognize it. Till my lieutenant finally said, "Hey, man, you're being a real asshole." And I was like, "You know what? I am. I appreciate you, but I needed somebody to tell me because I didn't see it, right? Because you're so caught up in everything else." And so I tried to now lead by example and say, "You know what? It's going to be okay." And I'm really glad that they said that to me.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we're hopefully going to teach them in the first year when we're building that foundation is like, look, it's not only your responsibility, it's also mine.
Mm-hmm.
I have just as much responsibility in the guys and girls that work in my department as they have in themselves. It's my responsibility.
I agree.
The new hires will have to hear that, and they need a senior guy like yourself to stand up and remind them. Because it's easy to go, well, we're going to fight fire, we're going to do all this cool shit, and you're going to play with cool stuff, and and that's the fun stuff. But the reality is like all the stuff we don't want to talk about and really don't is the stuff that hurts and has that long-term effect. Somebody just has to take a little time and talk about it once in a while and point it out.
And like you said too, it starts with the older guys and girls, right? Knowing, because I think as a new guy coming in or girl coming in, if you see an older guy, talking about it, it's going to make you feel less uncomfortable about it, right? Because you walk in the fire service and okay, that lieutenant, he's been here a long time. I need to look up to them, right? And so if they're talking about it, then okay, cool, maybe I can talk about it too.
Because most first responder, we're type A type people. Okay. That whether you're a man or a woman, if you're in the fire service or first responder, we're very much alike. We're all type A go-getters. We will, we want to tear every bit of ceiling down in the house. Okay. But we're also we don't want to seem weak. I don't know why that just jumped in my head, but so you don't want to be the first as a new person to go, hey, this is bothering me. Number one. But number two is they're mirrors. They're going to mirror what they see for the first 365 days. So if they see me slacking off and talking shit or just grumpy all the time and half-assing everything, they're going to mirror that. That's when they're building their foundation. They're going to follow along. But if they see us sitting around with the positive stuff, they see you and I having a conversation after a really bad call with some children involved, they're going to listen, but they're seeing, they're going to mirror, this is how we do it. It's not going to be weird to them like it is for you and I to talk about our feelings.
Yeah, because like you said, we weren't taught that, right? We weren't taught that it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah. Because we were brought up. I remember one of my first lieutenants, he was a Vietnam veteran.
Oh, yeah, so he's not talking about anything.
Yeah. And he was a great lieutenant, hard worker, great guy. But you didn't come back from, a wreck with fatality that had children in it and go, hey, Lieutenant, you want to talk about some feelings for a while over a cup of coffee? He would have thrown you off the damn deck. And it's not his fault. It's just, the generation.
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, my grandfather, so he went to World War II, left that and immediately came home and became a fireman. Right. And so my whole life growing up, I mean, he was doing it and then my dad did it. And so like I would call my granddad on the phone and we'd exchange stories, but there are things that he just flat out refused to talk about. Flat out refused. I'd ask him point blank questions about stuff and he'd be like, not talking about it.
No.
And he was Italian. So when he said it, I listened. Right. And my dad was the same way. My dad was a fireman and, grew up in the fire station, but I know for sure there's still things that he saw that bother him that he still hasn't talked about, because like you said, that wasn't taught to them.
It's becoming a little more okay to be not perfect. And it's okay to have empathy and,
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who can run a child and not have it affect them.
Oh
As
yeah.
as you know, no one's ever held a child not breathing and been okay with it.
Oh yeah.
It just doesn't happen. And it always seems to be, this month we had 2 on the same day. It
Mm.
always seems to be the children that hit the hardest.
Mhm.
And the general public doesn't understand. They don't even hear about it. It won't be on the news. But, a 4-month-old and a 3-year-old within,
Mhm.
a few hours of themselves, it hits. These
Oh
guys
yeah.
these guys are parents, these guys, they have young children, you know, it hits all around, all the way down,
Oh
all the
yeah.
way to the hospital staff, to the ambulance ride, to the first,
Mhm.
it just hits. And
So speaking about that, how do y'all handle that? How do you guys do you involve when you do like debriefings? Do you involve your hospital staff when it comes to hard calls? Do you let them deal with it on their end?
I've never been to one where we had hospital staff. We're doing a better job in the last 2 or 3 years since COVID, maybe
Mhm.
4. One of our chiefs has really spearheaded this, and we're very quick to get together right away and have a CISD, critical incident stress debriefing. And so we're at least having conversations and getting the engine crews together and say who were, the ambulance, whoever was there, will within like a day
Mhm.
there's usually a talk.
Mhm.
And obviously I don't think it stops there, and but it helps.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But we had a chief commit suicide here several
Oh
months
wow.
ago, and so
Oh
they
wow.
brought in some people from the state, from Auto, not in our district area,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
come lead a meeting. And it wasn't
Yeah.
it was weird because
Mhm.
everyone was so angry. I was very angry, and so I don't know. I don't feel like it helped, and I
Right.
don't feel like it's the end. I think it was just the very beginning of processing all of
Yeah.
that. You know, so
How are you doing now?
it's frustrating
Mhm.
because he was very pro mental health, very
Mhm.
pro what we're doing now.
Mhm.
And he was my lieutenant for a few years at
Oh
old
wow.
old Station 4, and so there's a lot of people that are really angry, and I
Yeah.
wish that I can't say 100% that it was because of the job, but I know that you don't do 25 years and not have something.
Nice. Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be just the job too. That's another
Right.
thing. You
Yeah.
could come to me, we could be sitting at work and say, look, the wife and I are having some issues. Or you're just having a hard time because your daughter's dating a guy with a neck tattoo, and it's bugging you. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't have to. So if I there's a lot of regret. A lot of people don't want to talk about it,
Mhm.
and it's frustrating. And I think about them all the time, and I know
Yeah.
everyone else does. But it's
Yeah.
it's very weird when it happens in your department.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can't even imagine. Can't even imagine.
So, but it's an example, and it'll always be an
Yeah.
example. I did a episode for them. I don't remember which number it was, but it's back on the YouTube channel. And you hear about first responders committing suicide, but then when it's someone it really hits, and it's like, okay, how are we're failing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
had two really close friends. They're both police officers. I worked very closely with them for a very long time, and I worked with one guy 24 hours prior,
yeah,
and got a phone call, and I was like, same thing. Didn't know, had no idea, no warning signs, right? And same thing, you just frustrated, like, well, why didn't you talk to somebody, right? Like, what was going on, that you couldn't reach out.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I understand. I'm
And
sorry. I'm sorry that happened.
I'm sorry that happened for you, and I'm sorry for everyone that's ever, you know, if we were sitting here making unrealistic goals, I'd say let's completely end suicide. If we want to shoot for the moon,
Yeah,
line of
for real.
duty deaths, it's dangerous enough doing what we do, but then when you
Mhm.
go home with the thoughts and feelings and whatever, life and family and bills and money, but it's
All of it.
happening way too often. PD,
Yeah.
good God, good luck. Those guys and girls are hard to crack
Mhm.
because they have to be
Stone all the time. Yeah.
they're stone cold all the time.
Mhm.
They're not getting an inch of slack from anyone in the public.
No, and so we talked about this too. I went to a conference not long ago, and it was a mix. It was fire, police, chaplains, civil administration, and we sat in groups, and I purposely made sure I sat with a bunch of police officers because I really wanted to see how they're dealing with it on their end. And it was staggering to me to think, for us, we have the ability and we're grateful enough to be on an ambulance with somebody else. We're on an engine with maybe 2 or 3 other people, right? And so even going home from that call, we can jumpstart talking about that, right? Having those conversations. Well, some of these departments, the majority of them, because of staffing and all the things, they're running one person in a police car, right? So who are they talking to? Who do they get to talk to, right? And like you said, it might be they clear that call and they got to immediately go to another one where maybe it's just them, right? And they haven't had the chance to process this call before they have to go to the next call, right? And so I think that that's something, that you need to look at, moving forward is do your very best to make sure that there's 2 people per car, or give those guys and girls the opportunity to really just kind of take a deep breath before they move on to that next call.
Because they don't have that station time like we do.
No.
They don't have that recliner, watch a movie, jackassing around, giving each other shit, because that's time where we're family. We live, we work 48-hour shifts.
Same, yeah.
Yeah. So, when you spend 48 hours with people, you're family. I know when Anthony's having a bad day because I know
for sure.
And Shimmick, and when he's a little pissy and he doesn't have his coffee.
Yeah.
So, and then when we get on the truck together and go run these calls, exactly. These police officers are running around one to a squad car. And then when they get back in the car and leave from whatever incident, they're on to another call. Number one, number two, they're sitting alone.
And their thoughts, which is the worst possible thing you can do.
And I'm sure they're not going home and dumping all over their wife or husband or whoever, So, oh God.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it.
I know one thing that we do, since we are smaller, is all of our officers, they all have the ability to just come to the fire station whenever they want, right? And so sometimes we'll try to invite them to dinner, maybe it's breakfast. We do coffee with cops a lot, so it gives the community an opportunity to come and talk to everybody. And so that's really, like you said, same thing, very laid back environment, but you can usually pick up on, hey, she's not, or he's not acting right, or maybe she doesn't seem like she's doing okay. That gives you the chance to really start that conversation in a very chill environment.
Okay, so maybe that's another take back. I'm going to take that back to Decatur, and I'm going to say, look, let's get them intertwined a little more with the fire department. Have them come by for meals or coffee. Let's have them stage at the station more, and see if we can incorporate them into the blue shirt. Because blue shirt is a blue shirt, whether you're a cop or a fireman or a jailer, or on the ambulance, or you're a paramedic or an EMT. Blue shirts. So we need to have coffee. We need to have meals with these people.
Yeah, we do it. I think it's like once a month we'll do it. We'll just pick a different spot within the city. And like I said, it's open to the public, but ordinarily, for the most part, it's usually just whoever the on-duty fire crew is and then whoever the on-duty officers are. But even still, that's 30 minutes that we can just kind of, hang out, joke around, whatever. But it really seems to help. And with us being so small, we really have to make sure that we're as tight as we can be, because sometimes, we're John Wayne in it, right? It might just be, maybe it's an officer pumping chest, and maybe it's just the 2 guys on the engine, right? Until the ambulance shows up. So we always have to make sure that we involve them in as much things as we can so they feel comfortable.
Yeah, because we were in Decatur as well. We work very closely with PD. They're there often. They're either clearing the scene, anything that's remotely dangerous, they'll go in and clear the scene first. Many times we walked in where the police officers started chest compressions and we take over. So we need to do a better job of incorporating our worlds together and putting them, because they're not talking to each other more than likely. I know they hang out, but
sure.
Not. Wow. So I wonder if we could work on something where you let's have them stage more often at the stations when they're down, and just have them get out of the car, come in the station, hang out, be part
especially
of the
in the summertime, right? When it gets hotter, right? I can't imagine being in that. I used to work private EMS where I was stuck in an ambulance 12 hours at a time. It's not fun, right? And at least, like you said, you had a partner, but if you're in that squad car 12 hours a day by yourself in sweltering heat, that doesn't sound fun.
Yeah,
so like you said,
Texas. It's 147 degrees here right now. It's imagine sitting in that car. No.
Yeah.
I'm taking that back to the city. Cops.
Good. I like that.
Because they're blue shirts as well, so we need to incorporate them. This is a lot of good stuff, Anthony. Good God.
Yeah, we did good. I like this. I'm really glad that I came on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're a smart man. I like it.
Mm.
All that because
A
you
lot of
reached
life experiences.
out. You saw a helmet sticker and you reached out, and here we are.
Yeah.
So, no, the stickers. I sent you a few, obviously, right?
Yeah, I have them. Yeah. In fact, there's one on my helmet right now, as a matter of fact.
Excellent. My goal with those is to have them be. I like the helmet sticker idea, so that's why I call it a helmet sticker. But I like that idea because I envision someday saying it's like a bat signal to others to say, oh, because that when we're at a wreck and I'm doing some work and you see the back of my helmet and it's got the CIV logo, you're like, okay, Shimmick he's on board. His train of thought is we align, so he's my friend now. It's a bat signal, and
yeah,
I'd love to see it on everyone's helmet. So if you need some more, let me know. I got some more ordered as well, and it's just and also it's I don't know if you've noticed it doesn't make sense. CIV on there, it's a head. And has anyone?
So it forces people to ask you.
Yeah, like have you had anyone go, what the hell is that?
Yeah, so my buddy that I work with on my shift, I gave him one of the stickers. My chief asked about it the other day. I was like, oh, it's this. Oh, okay. So he took one. So I'm spreading the awareness already.
Excellent. Anything to get a conversation started, there you go. And if it's a helmet sticker and some rookie or somebody or a cop or somebody says, what is that? It opens up a line of communication. So
yeah, you know how firemen are about their stickers, so it's perfect.
Yeah. I need to order 1,000 more because, no, it's good stuff. So what else?
Yeah.
What are we missing?
I think that was it. I think we covered quite a bit. I feel like. I tell you what, though, I would really love if you have me back. I'd really love to come back and do this again. It was a really good time.
Absolutely, I don't know what I'm doing, so just up front.
All right. It's okay.
I'm winging it like I have the first 48 years of my life, and I'm letting it be what it wants to be. And it's just these conversations help me. They help others. It's invigorating to see people just out sharing conversations and stories and trying to take care of each other and be better.
So it's all about.
It's not that hard. And I hope that someday they can mention, Anthony said some great things. And when I was 19 and now here I am a lieutenant and we have dinner together every night. It's mandatory because
we could change one person's life and change one person's perspective, then we win the game.
Yeah. So this is what it's all about. Just sitting around having a conversation, having a laugh. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, Anthony, I appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'll be in touch. We'll do this again soon. I definitely want to talk to the new guy.
So I definitely will. I'll send you his info for sure.
Let's see if we can get into is he 19?
He's, I think, 20. So still young.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does he live
young and new? He does.
Yeah, that's perfect.
First fire job.
We have a few at work in my department, but I would love to get a guy who doesn't know me and just, doesn't have to, and just really go, let's get inside that 20-year-old brain,
Yeah.
What's it like to sit at your dinner table with your mom and dad who have no idea what you do for a living?
No idea. And like I said, he had a pediatric drowning, first CPR, first drowning. It happened, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago. In fact, I was in Destin on the beach, and I found out through word of mouth. And so I spent probably an hour. I was getting ready to take pictures with my family, and I'm on the phone. I made 7 phone calls in probably an hour, just checking on everybody individually. And I got to him, and I was like, "Oh, you're not doing okay, bud. You probably need to go talk to somebody." He was struggling with it quite a bit. He's doing a lot better now. But like you talked about, CPR is one thing, but CPR on a pediatric kid straight out of the gate, first CPR ever, that's a lot to handle.
I think I have roughly 3, maybe 4, if I want to get technical. One of my 4 is a pediatric drowning. Mm-hmm. And I planted a white cross on the corner of 6th Avenue and Fairway Drive.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you've seen the White Cross episode, but when we have these, we'll leave with this. You can go back to the station and talk about this when you're on shift again. Let them know or talk about that when something bad happens, we mentally place a white cross. Just like when you're on the highway and you see somebody passed away, okay, white cross. Something traumatic happened there. Well, as your career goes on, you start placing more and more white crosses all over town because they're memories. And then every time you go past, like every time I go past 6th Avenue and Fairway Drive, I remember holding that child. This was roughly 2006, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget the feel of his skin. All five senses were firing full bore.
Overdrive, yes.
Very traumatic call. I'll never forget it. And no one ever explained to me that when you drive past that house on 6th Avenue Fairway Drive, you will relive that every time you go past that house. Well, that makes for a long 25-year career when 6th Avenue is one of the major fairways through your town.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one of my four, I'll leave you with this. One of my four, Christmas Eve, 2015. So every Christmas Eve, no matter what I'm doing, I always think about it every single Christmas Eve, right? Now, it doesn't, as I've gone further along, it doesn't bother me as much, but it's still a trigger, right? Still same thing, sight, sound, feel, touch, all those things, you still remember all of it.
Mm-hmm. And we start by reminding them that you will relive that to some degree every time you pass that white cross.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, and if we manage the smoke properly, it doesn't have to be life altering, or it doesn't have to throw your day off on Christmas Eve with your family, but you're going to take a 5-10 minute pause and you're going to remember that call, and you're going to always remember that call for the rest of your life.
Right. Like we talked about too, when that grief shows up, you'll be ready for it. You'll understand how to manage it.
And it never expires.
Right.
I'm right. I wrote that down. But that's
You're
yours?
welcome.
Okay.
You're welcome. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
That's good though. You know what? And that's what it's all about. And if that's what it takes, something that simple for people to remember and understand it, then that's completely fine.
All right. Well, this was great, Anthony. Let's sign off here, and we will schedule another one. We'll be in touch. Okay.
Sounds good. I appreciate you, sir.
Not a problem, Anthony from Texas. I appreciate you coming out. This is Shimmick, obviously, with Conversations Ventilation. We're in the spare bedroom studios, by the way. Welcome to my spare bedroom.
Very nice. Very nice.
So we're here. We're spreading the word. We're having great conversations. Anthony did not disappoint, and we'll have him back for sure. So until next time, have a great night, and everyone be safe, stay safe, and stay together.